Hello, indie authors. Today it is July 24th, 2019. As I record this, it is season 2, episode 18. Today we're going to be talking about goal setting versus time blocking. But first, a personal update. I'm still working on the coursework for the business class I'm taking, the Sweet Spot Strategy by Rachel Cook, MBA. And I'm at the place in my work, in my homework, where I need to talk to writers and do a little interview. Basically, it amounts to like a 4-question interview and find out what challenges you are facing right now and how you think a mentor or a coach could help you with those challenges and kind of extrapolate like where you want to go in your author business. If in fact you're thinking about author business, or if you're just trying to get a writing project done, or if you're trying to build accountability into your submission process, or any number of things. Every writer is different. Every writing process is different. Every writing journey is different. And so I would love to hear from you what challenges you are facing right now as a writer and how you think a coach could help, because I'm still trying to design some coaching program that could help authors in my community and also, worldwide, because it will be online. So please email me. That's probably the best way. You can always find me on Instagram and Facebook in my Facebook group, but I think probably the easiest would be email, and that's Valerie@ValerieIsonAuthor.com. I am not doing any manuscript writing this summer. I've made a blanket decision, a command decision, because I'm just traveling too much. I'm going to go camping this weekend, so I only had and I was recovering from the last trip I went on. So between getting ready for a trip, going on the trip, and recovering from the trip, I don't have a lot of time to do the actual writing. More important, I'm not able to get kind of in headspace that allows me to do the writing. So I've decided those are my summer hours. Some businesses have summer hours, which I thought was a pretty great idea. So my summer hours are basically going to be me not manuscript writing for the rest of the summer. Unless I really feel a burning desire to do it, and then I'll do it. But I'm going to see if the focus on the coursework and the break from writing will allow me to jump back in September, October with just renewed enthusiasm and excitement for the writing projects that I have, and also the clarity to just pick one. I really struggle with that, and I do have 5 books that I've started that have not reached finish stage. Well, that's not true. I guess it's down to 4. I do have the goal setting book complete, although I want to tweak it a little bit, but it's not like heavy revision. It's just adding I might add 1 chapter to the book, but that's basically done. And the How to Write a Novel or Memoir book is in revision stage right now, but I'm in the spot where I'm just adding in not descriptions, but I want to put more examples in the book. So I am trying to decide if I want to put examples from my own work as the examples for the book, or if I want to find examples from other people's work to put in the book, or if I want to do a combination of both. So that's kind of where I stalled out and started working on other projects. The memoir project is still in heavy revision stage. The novel I'm working on is in heavy revision stage, actually heavy rewrite stage, I would say. And then there is the How to Self-Publish book, The Nitty-Gritty of Self-Publishing, and that one is still in the rough draft stage. So I've got all these writing projects, and I'm also taking, some classes. So and editing other people's work too. So I felt really stretched thin and just unfocused. And I realized this must be a process for me. It's cyclical. It's a pattern, and I get a handle on it. I know what works for me, and I fix it, but I always seem to fall back into it. And I don't know what the trigger for that is. I don't know if it's seasonal, or if it's, I don't know what that is yet. I'm still, detectiving to try to figure out what that is. And as soon as I figure out what the trigger is, I'm going to be set, because then I'll know how to design my writing process and my writing schedule around it so that it's not devastating, because I still, kind of grind through my work, but it does stall me out. And that just seems like such a waste of time when I have so many cool ideas that I want to work on. So that was a total digression, but that was my summer hours little update. Another thing, this is another project that I really want to work on that I've given myself a firm no, you can't do this until at least 2020, maybe even late 2020, early 2021. But that is to design online courses. I do have past clients that have been asking for it, and it would be another stream of income, passive income, set the course and just it's just another IP, it's another intellectual property that I can earn income off of. So that has been, in the back of my mind for over a year now, 2 years really. But it's just not the right time, I think, in my author business trajectory to put those in. So, but it will happen. And I have been listening to a new podcast by Teachable, which is the platform that I have an account with, and that's the platform I would use for the online courses. And that's getting me, thinking about it probably too much for me right now. I need to not think about online classes and think about the other stuff that I'm going to be doing. I got to keep focused, but I guess summertime is not a focus time of the year for me. And maybe that's why I've given myself permission to not manuscript write for the rest of the summer. So I can try to be focused on something else. Like I said, I am going camping this weekend. And then next weekend is the Willamette Writers Conference. I'm going to, and I had to skip last year, so I'm really looking forward to going this year. I'm going to be taking a master class from a literary agent on good beginnings, so that'll be neat. I'm also volunteering to staff a workshop that Jeff Goins is teaching, so he'll be there. That'll be interesting, and I'll get to meet him. If you don't know who Jeff Goins is, he wrote several writing books, and also he has a podcast called Your Portfolio Life, or just Portfolio Life. I can't remember now. So that's exciting. I'm reading, I'm reading a book. Actually, it's an audiobook. I'm listening to a book called The Bookshop on the Corner by Jenny Colgan. That's fun. I really like the narrator. She is English and does Scottish accents really well. So I like hearing that. That's fun. I listen to audiobooks when I don't want to listen to podcasts and when I'm doing something that will prevent me from opening up a book and reading it. For instance, working out or cleaning the house or driving, stuff like that, obviously. But I was in a place, I hadn't listened to an audiobook in quite a while, and I started listening to it, I think 2 days ago, because I was cleaning the house or something. I just wasn't in the space for a podcast. I didn't want to listen to nonfiction, so I wanted some fiction, and I was in between books, so I thought, okay, I'll start this. But then that means I'm not reading fiction, and there's times when I would rather sit down on the couch and open up a book and read instead of listen, because I feel kind of silly just sitting on the couch listening to my book. I don't know why that feels silly. I like to be read to, so maybe I should just get over myself. But the point is, I've tried starting 2 other novels in paperback form, but I'm not able to get into them, and I think it's because, I'm still listening to this other book. So I'll have to finish listening to that book, get over myself, and just sit there with my eyes closed and read. How cool is that? I love technology. So nonfiction, I'm still reading Twyla Tharp's The Creative Habit, Learn It and Use It for Life. And that, it was recommended by Rachel Cook, and so far, it's vaguely interesting, and I don't know if it's not like gripping me, because I do read my nonfiction in spurts, like during breakfast I'll read, or if I'm, during the day and I need to, basically when I'm eating, I'll read nonfiction. I'll read during lunch or during breakfast, but during the day is when I allow myself to read nonfiction. So I just do it in short spurts. So maybe that's why I haven't really gotten into this book. But the other idea I had is that the book is all about how to find and how to nurture creativity, and I feel like I'm a creative person already, so I'm not really learning anything new from this book yet. But I'm only a third of the way in, so I'll finish it, and there's cool exercises in there, so I guess I am picking up some exercises that I can be doing that further cement creativity, and I like learning, so I'll try anything once. Okay. I'd like to remind everybody that this podcast is sponsored by my supporters at Patreon, and being a patron of the arts is a totally cool thing to do. Joining my Patreon community also gets you sneak peeks into my creative world, and for $1 a month or more, less than a pack of gum, you too can become a patron of the arts and me. Find me on patreon.com/Valerie Ihsan, IHSAN. Resources, I said Jeff Goins' podcast, Your Portfolio Life, or This Portfolio Life. Oh, I should have looked it up, but it's Portfolio Life. And then I did mention briefly in the personal update that Teachable, the platform I have an account with for the online school when that starts, has a new podcast, and I think there's only 3 or 4 interviews on there already. It's just brand new podcast, and they interview successful online teachers. So even if you're not into having an online school, it's still really interesting to hear entrepreneurial people talk about their success, because it gives you ideas. And as an author, if you're a podcast listener, and I'm assuming you are because you're listening to this podcast, the author podcasts that are available, of which there are many, and I listen to many, many, many of them, they all have, authory stuff in common, and how to be successful as an author, and how to market as an author, and how to run your business as an author. And so I find it really refreshing to listen to business podcasts that have nothing to do with authorship. And I find that, it helps me think out of the box a little bit regarding entrepreneurship and marketing, and just, healthy business practices. So that one is called Everyone is Teachable. So if you want to check out Everyone is Teachable, that is a new podcast that I have so far enjoyed. I've listened to 2 episodes. I think that's all there is. There might be one more. Okay, main topic, goal setting and time blocking. And I'm going to riff this one. So I didn't even write myself notes for this, because what I want to say about goal setting versus time blocking is fairly succinct and simple, I think. I may find myself not thinking that in about 10 minutes when I'm talking in circles and can't remember what I wanted to say. But at any rate, let's start with some definitions. So goal setting, everybody has heard the term goal setting before. And I wrote a book about goal setting, and I talk a lot about goal setting to my clients and to my students. And I do goal setting in my regular business practice. And I'm goal setting pretty much monthly. At least twice a year, I go through and do a major goal setting, I don't want to say event, but I sit down and it's kind of an extensive journaling session, I guess. And I make a big list of all of the things that I want to do and be and see and accomplish and have. And I create goal statements out of those things that are super important to me and kind of narrow them down until I find the ones that would make the biggest impact in my business or in my life too. And then do some strategic planning and really narrow down those goal statements into individual steps. And then I set due dates, I guess. I hesitate to use that word because sometimes it's really triggering for people to have a deadline. And I really don't actually like the word deadline. It just sounds pessimistic and fraught with negativity from the start. So I started using the word time stamping, which I really like, actually. I don't know where that word came from, but that's what I started using. So I'll make goals, I'll make steps from those goals, and I'll time stamp them, which means I've put a date on them where I think that I'd like to have this finished by. And then I'll actually put that in my planner so that I see, oh, this is coming up. This is what I want to be working on. And I'll put those individual steps in my planner also as a weekly to-do or a weekly focus. And in that way, I get all my big accomplishments done. And I really, really like goal setting. I've taught classes on goal setting, and it really was the way that, it drove my engine for many, many years. And then I listened to a podcast, shout out to the Writers Well, and the career author, basically Jay Thorne. I can't remember now which podcast I heard this on, and he's on both of them. So, and they're both dual. So in the Writers Well, he co-hosts that podcast with Rachel Herron, and the Career Author podcast he co-hosts with Zach Bohannon, his business partner. So I can't remember which one it was on. But they were talking about time blocking, really, not setting goals, and how detrimental goal setting was for Jay in particular, and for actually a lot of people, a lot of authors I know can't set deadlines for themselves because it's paralyzing and so anxiety producing that they can't even get started working on the project because they have this timestamp looming, and it just stops them before they can start. So Jay doesn't do that at all. And while, I kind of felt a little silly listening to him talk about a different way to do things because goal setting was so ingrained in my regular business process. It was part of my author life. It was part of how I planned things and how I worked my production schedule and how I got anything done, really, was set a goal, break it down in steps, put it in the calendar, and do it. And having that timestamp for myself kept me accountable to myself. And also accountable to, I'm in an accountability group, so I would report, what my goal was for that week because it was already written in my planner. And then I would report back, the next week if I had finished it or not. And when I didn't get those things finished, I usually knew why. And I would try again the next week. And if I didn't get it finished again, I usually knew why. And at that point, I would decide if this was something I really needed to do or if I could just dump it. And I heard in a masterclass one time about the 4 Ds of planning or getting things done. So there was to just do it. If it was something small and, I don't know why I'm stalling on this. I'm just going to do it right now. Do it or delay it. Like, okay, legitimately, I don't really need to think about this for like another 3 months. So I'm just going to put this in my 3-month planner. I'm going to delay it. So do it, delay it, delegate it. Can somebody else do this? Why am I the one that has to do this thing? So delay it or delegate it, do it, or dump it. And it's really freeing to be able to say, oh, well, I actually don't really know why this is in my list. It doesn't really mean anything to me anymore. I don't need it to accomplish my other goal. So I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to dump it. So the 4 Ds are do it, delay it, delegate it, or dump it. So if something on my to-do list has not been done for like 2 or 3 weeks in a row, I go through the 4 Ds and figure out what to do with it. So when I heard Jay Thorne talking about the time blocking or just not setting goals at all, he doesn't call it time blocking. He called it, I don't know, it was a system that he had. And the system is time blocking. Setting a system up where, say it's a writing goal, and instead of saying, okay, I'm going to get this book, rough draft, finished in 4 months, he would instead of having that timestamp looming over him, he would say, I'm going to sit down from 5 a.m. to 11 a.m. every day, and I will write. And however many words I get done, I'll get done. I just used an example on the time. I don't know if those are actually his writing hours. But that when I heard him say that, it was kind of like, there was that initial silliness of, oh, well, what about all this goal setting I've been doing and preaching about? Because I think it's important to have goals. And it wasn't that Jay Thorne didn't believe you shouldn't have goals. It was just having that deadline over you was not productive for him. And if you are a person who shies away from setting timestamps or deadlines, whether they're internal or, external, if somebody else is giving them to you, that's a little bit different. But if they're internal and you are setting yourself a goal with a timestamp on it and that hasn't been working for you and you're not getting your stuff done and you're beating yourself up about it and feeling bad about it, maybe that's not your jam. Maybe instead you should try the time blocking instead. Just set a time that you're going to work on stuff. And it can be, you can take your list out and you can have these things that you want to get done. So you can still, this is what I want to, I guess, in conclusion say. You can do both of them at the same time. And that, I think, is where I'm gravitating to. I think goal setting is super important and for me. And so I will set my goals, again, strategically plan, break them down into the baby steps, and instead of putting them in my, instead of putting them in my planner, because that's where the shame comes when I don't get the stuff done, I will instead just have time set aside in my calendar where I'm going to work on goals. And eventually that stuff will get done. And I know that. And I find a little bit of relief, like, okay, I don't have a particular day or time looming over me. I know the stuff is going to get done. It's not going to get done any later because I'm still going to sit down at the appropriate time and do the appropriate amount of work. I just won't have a preconceived idea about how much work I can get done on a certain day or a certain week. Because life happens. And really, I want to do another whole podcast on work-life balance and rolling with the punches. But I'll just give you the secret to it right now. And that is, if you have a plan and life happens and gets in the way and something big just really roadblocks you, like someone in your family has a grave illness, or you're offered a new job and it takes a lot of, learning curve to it, which takes your mind and time away from your other writing projects. Or if you are suddenly faced with an unexpected house guest that's staying for a lot longer than you're comfortable with, for instance, then, these life curveballs are going to happen. Or, I know lots of people in the writing community and out that suffer from migraines, or if you have a chronic illness, or if those flare-ups will happen and you never really seem to know when they're going to show up. And like last week, we talked about overwhelm. If you're having a mental health day, that's not a day where you can focus on your goals and get stuff done. And even if it's a time that you've set aside in your calendar to work on those goals or work on your to-do list or work on your project, if it's one of those curveball days, you're not going to get it done. And instead of beating yourself up about it, you just make a new plan. And I find that really reassuring. So I'll leave you with that bit of reassurance that you can set goals, you can set aside time to work on them instead of setting a deadline for yourself, unless deadlines work for you. If deadlines work for you, some people are prompted by them. They are driven by deadlines, and they like being in crisis mode, and it helps them get stuff done. I shouldn't have snapped. I'm doing the snapping is okay for YouTube, but not for the podcast. I'm not sure I'll be able to edit that out. So yes, in conclusion, set your goals, but don't worry so much about the deadlines for those goals. You can set them if that works for you. You can set a rough, deadline, more like a range instead of a line in the sand. It's like, okay, I'd like to get this done by summertime, by the end of summer. Or, okay, I'd like to have this done by the end of the year. The end of the year, I guess, is a specific date, but maybe you could say by the winter, and so that doesn't necessarily mean December 31st, because I don't know, depending on where you live, winter exceeds quite a bit further and you're in like February before the weather starts turning nicer, or even later again, depending on where you live. So set your goals, set your time in your calendar to work on your goals, and just get whatever done get done whatever can get done that day based on your headspace, based on what's happening in your world around you. And yeah, it'll all get done. It really will, I promise. So if you would like to work with me on that little interview I talked about at the beginning of the podcast, email me, Valerie@ValerieEsonAuthor.com. I'm really interested in bringing value to the writing community, and so I'm just in that research stage, finding out, I think I know what will help people, but I'm not a mind reader, and again, every writer is different, every journey is different, every process is different, so instead of me just arbitrarily deciding that this is the coaching problem that will best suit you, why don't you come on and listen, or excuse me, I want to listen to what you have to say. So please email me and we'll set up a time where I can just ask you a few questions, or you can just email it to me too. Like, what challenges are you facing right now, and how do you think a coach could help you with that project or with that process or with that challenge? So be well, happy writing, happy publishing, happy author lifing. I'll see you next week. Be well.